So the book, which we just finished, was really a story. It was a story about two great sources of alphabet making, one from the ancient Slavic world, the other from the world of the Hindus, or the Sanatana Dharma in the old sense. We showed that letter making was linked in the human body with breathing and with movements, that it was applied to earth, heavens, and then to the earth. And then we saw how this idea spread first to the east, then to the west, and then we tried to make sense of some of the underlying patterns of the letter making. And then we concluded by saying that the letters had started as symbols, they had been broken up into letters. That connection remained in Middle Asia, but in the West, the letters became completely seen as abstract marks, and that was, and therefore the whole meaning and the whole history and the stories all got lost. Now, in making that story, I had to leave out lots of things and lots of details. And so in the appendices, I'm going to come back and outline a few of the things that couldn't be said in the story itself. There are 13 appendices. The first one comes back to the idea of signs and marks, which was also the title of chapter 1. But here I want to, well, in Dieringer's approach, he told us that we have embryo writing, then picture writing, then linked with ideas, and then finally marks that become syllabaries and then alphabets. And he made it sound as if each of these replaced the other and that there was no connection. Well, in my first appendix, I'm going to take you to Middle Asia and concentrate mainly on the Tamgas, which I mentioned, and make some mention of the Turkish links with the Chinese, and to show you that some of these pictograms and ideograms, and even the hieroglyphs, are very closely connected to some of the early letters. So that although there is a progression, there is also a way in which these things remain connected. The second appendix is about the stories of the sky. So we notice that the letter A can be a bird that flies up and down. I'm going to take you through some of those great stories that connect the East and West. The third is called systems, because I mentioned that there were sequences of letters, like 1, 10, and 19. I will go into the cosmological background of that and show you that at a very deep level, the systems of the Chinese, the Persians, the Arabs, and the West are all connected. The fourth is on weaving and decoration. And I will show you that these marks and symbols that we think of as purely things we read are also woven into tapestries and into clothes, and so that for the people in Middle Asia, when they walk around, they can read the alphabet on their clothes and on their decorations. That takes me to Appendix 5, to figure ground. I showed you in the final conclusions how by taking a very sacred symbol and changing the figure to the ground, I suddenly changed from a symbol representing sacred things for the Romans to something sacred to the Muslims. And I will show you how this interplay of figure ground, especially in the Arabic tradition, leads to fascinating patterns that are both letters and symbols. 6 goes into the evolution and simply will go back to some of the standard ways in which people have tried to classify the evolution. And I'll show you that the West has tended to make everything depend on Proto-Semitic and make nonsense of the fact that, in fact, that the Sanskrit and all of the languages in the East come from Aryan and not from the Semitic. Then the next, number 7, will go to the roots, and R-O-U-T-E-S, and try to show you some maps to show how we go from Asia to Europe and link that way. The next is about the abjads, and we'll show you, told you that there was this underlying structure, and I'll show you some of the connections between ABJD, what those connections mean in terms of symbolism, and so on. Then I will go to Chaldea and take the Chaldean alphabets, and I mentioned that they link up with the Hebrew, but now I'll go into the details and you'll just see the Chaldean map and the Hebrew. And then I'll do the same for the Egyptian alphabets. Then I will go briefly through the major numbering systems. So I showed you in one lecture the associations with the number 3. For my Tokyo lectures, I have a single lecture for each of the numbers. So one for the number 1, one for 2, one for 3, one for 4, and so on. In this one, I'm just going to go very briefly through the main numbers 1 to 15, and then show you numbers like 36, 33, 36, 108, and to give you an idea of how the letter-making numbers were also numbers for cosmology. And then in the final 2, I go to principles. So I show you how the principles of letter making, something that I touched on when I showed you how that spiral goes. We'll also look at a little video to see how that works and how I make a spiral, split it into 2, and then do that. And then finally, the 13 will be on principles of space, because those magic squares that we talked about become then the basics of something called the Vastu. But the Vastu is not just about making something on Earth, it is also a reflection of the whole cosmos. And I'll make some of those connections clear. So that is a first glimpse of what we're going to do in the second section of appendices.